Wolf, I took a quick look at the title, and are you making content of substance rather than just laughing at people like you usually do? This video is an educational deep dive into Chinese cultivation, as I keep seeing cultivation anime and shows, and I literally have no clue what's going on. Basically, someone born in China would inherently learn these cultural tropes. Every culture, for that matter, has inherent ideas acquired through osmosis. The Chinese and Taoist philosophy. England believing that it's surely coming home this time, lads. I always thought that Chinese cultivation was when you made heroin in the jungle, but really it's the mystical art of achieving physical, spiritual and mental enlightenment. Being primarily an anime tuber, which I'm not even sure if I like that term, I've encountered a few cultivation shows. I've watched maybe 3 to completion, and I can firmly tell you that I have no fucking clue what they're talking about.
Huh?
Lord of Mystery started, and this guy's like, oh, I've reached the myriad recession through astral carnation ritual mode. So I rewinded it as I wondered whether I'd missed an episode or if this was some kind of sequel. It just opens like that, and I think it expected me to understand something before watching your show. I can speak for the entire Western Hemisphere here when I say that we don't have time for that shit. If you don't spoon feed it to me or give me sippies like those Renaissance fair women, I'm not going to understand it, and nor should I. I figured who better to learn about ancient mysticism than me, another ancient mystical creature. Ooh, look at this. We have an early Wolf's comment corner here, as it's relevant. Wolf, where were you 64 million years ago? Great question. There was once a loud pop, like when a local dickhead cuts off their exhaust and drives really fast, and then suddenly I was propelled at light speed. Hold on, I think I have the footage somewhere. There it is. Okay, here you go. Ah! Around this time, Chinese cultivation also began, in the form of mystical space energies. I would like to stress that I actually have done some research for this video. Usually I go off memory and wing it, but for this I have simply no information to start with, besides that the Chinese speak funny, and at one point the British turned up and ruined everything. But you can more or less apply that to anyone on the planet, so it's not really new. China means Middle Kingdom. There you go, there's a new fact record. Within China there was a little religion called Taoism, or Taoism. They are the same, but the pronunciation depends on how much of a cheeb you are. Cheeb? Weeb? I don't know. Much like the ancient Celts, the ancient people of China also danced around naked looking at stars and big rocks, something I still like to do. Then they decided to start reading and writing, and it got a lot less cool. Between 8th and 3rd century BCE, you had the Confucius era and other writers of note. Here we get the first philosophies of inaction and harmony. Essentially, without getting too deep and too far away from anime, inaction is a way to grow more like the Tao, which is basically the flow of life or energy. The universe in its true form is nothingness, with nothing imparting upon it. Essentially it's like a pool of water being still and formless. People enact upon the pool, and it causes ripples. And that's no good. I mean this in a very polite way, as this is an actual religion, but I don't think anyone knows what the fuck it means. I shouldn't really compare, but the interpretations are so different I found it quite strange. One will say that doing anything is bad, but also another that says that intending to do nothing is also bad. It's a bit like Jesus kind of saying love your neighbour, and then there's an entire offshoot of Christianity who interpreted it as firebombing your neighbour's rabbit hutch instead. I think, and I know, I'm not the greatest scholar in the world, as I gave up that after the golden age of Islam, but I don't think you're supposed to know what it means. You just need to be. Yes. This technically means that telling you about Taoist philosophy and dooming you to consider and act upon its teaching pretty much messes with your chance for enlightenment. So, sorry. My favourite part of this history was where there was this king who just assigned loads of ministers to literally everything. And this was heralded as a beacon of inaction at work and a sign of genius. I know what this is. I've done it myself. He just delegated so he didn't have to do any work. So yes, he is a genius. The way that he was just able to wake up, do what he wanted and then go to bed was a real step in Taoism apparently. This is where you get the idea of civil service exams. It features in Free the Witch, Lord of Mysteries and many other Chinese adaptations. By having the exam technically open to anyone and the ranking scores public, it was a way to dangle upward mobilities in the faces of the smelly peasants. Did you hear that the great king has allowed even us to become government administrators? Yeah, but we also can't read and write and live in mud huts. This government bloat would go on to be disastrous, as you had simply too many hands in the pot, and the schemings and politicking of ministers and officials, which definitely wouldn't harm China in the future. Oh no, it's harming China. So how does this relate to anime, you say, shaking me vigorously? Well, okay. So you kinda have brain Taoism, and then you have physical Taoism. Brain Taoism is dumb nerdy stuff where you think about things. You know, contemplate and shit. This way you grow more enlightened and start to glow like a lava lamp. The second is physical, where you seek to use the energy of the universe and bend it to your will. This is where we have Taoism, people reading and debating philosophy. Yeah, cool bro, but when can I fly on my sword? The merging of magic and philosophy made the groundwork for what we see as cultivation today. This was the part of organised religion that I like to call the make it up phase, and it's always the most fun time to get involved from experience. Basically, you just walk into a room, say a bunch of stuff, and then come back a couple 100 years later to see what they've kept. Fun fact, I actually invented voodoo. Yeah, that was me. Here's a fun guide of how you can become a cultivation master. Step 1. Be a weirdo. Oh, good, you're way ahead of me. How did you know I was going to ask that? Then you convince people around you that you have special knowledge and that you can teach special knowledge, but only if they bring you riches and build you a temple. Surely, that would never work. Then you create a hierarchy, and through the process of elimination, as well as some actual competent advice such as good diet and not eating rotten figs, you now have a sect. But unfortunately, so does every other lunatic, and that's where most cultivation manga and anime pick off. So what's the deal with the whole regression, levels, Feng Shui and ascension and golden cores and fucking whatever? There is an official and respectful way to describe this, but I'm going to go with mine. Talking utter bollocks is an art form. It's something that requires complete confidence to even attempt. Getting the first follower in my experience is the hardest part, but what you do is you just tell them that you have special secrets, and someone will eventually be curious or stupid enough to ask you about it. Say your most loyal disciple has done absolutely everything you've ever asked of them. You've kept putting off the final piece of secret knowledge that you've been teasing for years, mainly because it doesn't exist. If you don't tell them anything, it's going to look real suspicious. So, of course, you make something up. You have them do the special ceremony, T-posing on the wheelie bin for 3 days without shitting. Something like that. Make it really hard. But of course the human body can and will complete the task or die trying. And unfortunately, they've reached completion. You've got 3 options here, and this comes from an expert in bollocks, so this is the only thing in this video that I will completely stand behind as fact. Option A. Admit you were lying and take the public lynching you deserve. Option B. Gaslight. Oh, I bet you feel it now, don't you? You completed the wheelie bin ritual, so now, inside your soul, you have formed a fat greater core. Yes. Excellent. I knew the Tao drew me to you. Yeah, I guess I feel better, but... Ooh, maybe it was too early for you. No, I feel it, Sensei, I really do. My great fat core, yes. Option 2. Gaslight them, and then hit them with even more bollocks. Excellent. Your soul sphere has adequately formed into a nutritious egg for the universe's energies to converge as your soul reaches its mortal end. However, you, wheelie bin ritual master, upon your death, you will not go with the other souls into the great cycle. You have ascended to a higher tier. When you are reborn, you will do so with a high chi infinity body, from where you will undertake the process again, but even more powerfully, and have the knowledge of my arcane teachings. How do I know this? Oh, you fool. Because I completed the wheelie bin ritual in my past life, just like you did. You have now earned the right to go forth with my blessing and make your own sect, who naturally sends me offerings as a form of taxation at regular intervals, and you will spread my teachings. Considering this person is aware of the life of luxury and fortune you live, they are going to be stoked with this development. So when the other students are eagerly awaiting the results of the secret ritual, and you come out fucking buzzing 'cause you get in your own school, well, everyone just fell a little deeper into the trap. This is where the idea of regression comes from. To be someone Chinese scholars refer to as dope as fuck, you must prove your dopeness with cool things and stuff. This isn't even me taking the piss, as it's still done in many martial arts to prove a teacher's quasi-mystical powers. This ranges from impressive feats of endurance or technique to stuff that, if you took it out of a martial arts context, would be incredibly hilarious. My favourite are the ones where they have someone run into you to clear you out of negative energies and people just get absolutely fucking mowed down. However, if you can't for whatever reason do these things, then fear not. You have the regression strategy bollocks.
Young student, do you know why I am frail and sickly?
I assume because you are a Chinese peasant.
Yes, but no. I am a regressed soul. I gave up my great powers in the past life after completing the wheelie bin ritual and not shitting for 3 days. And according to Great Sensei, to grow even stronger, the universe, the Tao, must find balance and serenity. By becoming far weaker and frail through my own will at the point of soul transference, I was able to take this form, and so when I pass once more with my great knowledge and suffering I have experienced, my next form will be even more powerful.
Wow, that's very wise, Sensei.
Yes, I know. Now get naked and feed me grapes.
Much like in modern Asia, classical Asia also engaged in the time-honoured tradition of scamming old people for money. It turns out that living in squalor and poverty leads you to spend what you have on unrealistic dreams such as immortality. Regression and ascension take the form of reincarnated in another world when it comes to media. The power systems in cultivation anime are completely clapped and broken in ways that dreadful Japanese isekai can only dream of. If Gojo fought a Chinese cultivation protagonist, he'd be blasted to destination fucked before he could even cross his fingers and expand his domain. Jumping on swords and going 8,000 miles per hour is how these bellends get around, and that's if their great weapon that contains the soul of an ascended chimp or something doesn't feel like putting itself in sports mode and actually going fast. On a side note, much like the harem protagonists of anime, celibacy is very important to some sects. This is because that the life energy that you expend through intercourse is known as jing, which you must cultivate inside your scrotum like a Neopet or Tamagotchi. This is true, by the way, and not me having a laugh. This was stunning, as I always thought it was pee that was stored in the balls. I like to say this part was me lying for fun, but no, jing is stored in the balls and must be protected from those jing-stealing vixens. If we re-look at Lord of Mysteries, beginning with what we've learnt so far, it kind of starts to make sense. He wakes up in the body of the recently undeaded. He puts it down to his ascension ritual succeeding or not succeeding, it's hard to tell sometimes, and tries to learn about the systems of the new world, as that's what you do in Taoism. You figure out the Tao and what you can do to bend it to your will, or just go with the flow. Something he does with his new special realm, where these people go to him as they believe him to be a great sage who can help them progress to the next spiritual level, primarily with bollocks. Fancy that. I'm aware I'm doing a great job, so show it with a like or subscribe, or even a hype, whatever that is. I don't know what it is, but I want it. In fact, bwong. You, yes, you. Do you wish to grow in spiritual level? If you like and subscribe, you too will become a mystical wolf in the next life, if you cultivate your jing. See, it's easy. My favourite cultivation thing, however, is their obsession with pills and enchantment of objects, mainly because of the sheer scope of silly bollocks one can commit. Most people know Feng Shui. Basically, it's where you construct a room with lots of items to create the best spiritual environment or something. Obviously, it's made up, but I'll allow it because it's funny. An item's construction, its materials, its placement and its intent all affect the energies it puts out. Creating an environment that is completely neutral is the goal, as we're looking for that inactive life flow of the Tao. But that's really hard, as the rules are made up and don't matter. Have a fever? Well, you need to cool down, bucko. So let's arrange this room to have a surplus of ice energy. Get too cold? Do the reverse. It kind of works like Galen's theory of the opposites in medicine. Something I told him was fucking stupid, but you know them Greek philosophers, am I right? Even architecture, for example, has this as a feature. Flat surfaces are good, as they are inactive, like the pond metaphor. Corners are bad, as that's negative energy. Homes facing large flat surfaces are more expensive than those on corners. And, fun fact, all the big buildings, especially the banking ones, all point to one particular building, deliberately. Yes, the British Embassy / Governor's residence. And also a British bank was targeted by a Chinese bank with their pesky pointy angled designs. I thought this was a joke and I thought I was being trolled, but I promise it's not me trolling either. HSBC, which was the British bank, decided that they needed to counteract this superstitious bollocks, which I consider on the same level as crystal gazing and sunning your ring piece. They decided that to repel the negative energy back at the Chinese bank, they needed to construct 2 objects on the roof that resemble cannons. Again, that's real. You could honestly just crane in a life-size statue of a monkey wanking in a tree and be like, yeah, that's how you counter the negative energies. I've had an idea for a money-making scheme. I'd propose building a giant spiked crystal-like sculpture with enough negative output to kill local dogs, and then the locals will pay me simply to not build it and go away. Imagine having prime real estate be that much cheaper because of something as silly as a triangle. I could buy this for 20 quid and a pack of custard creams, as no Chinese person would possibly want it. I've never come across an entire cultural system entirely designed for someone like me and my silly bollocks to flourish. They are lucky I was spending my time being the Empress of China much later on in their history. If I had learned that you could simply lie your way to mystical brilliance, then I'd have quite frankly ascended to godhood by now. You can counter literally anything anyone throws at you with just greater levels of silly goosery. Ha! How do you like that? I've constructed my sect school to channel negative energy from us towards your school. Ha! Very clever. For someone who is stuck on magical ascension plane 3. You see this here yo-yo? It contains the absorption properties of a scrub daddy, but with a flick of thine wrist, I have not only dispelled the negative chi, but channeled it entirely into my balls, which are filled to the bursting with jing. On a matter of pill making, it's more bollocks that they still get away with to this day, known as alchemical cultivation. It's harder these days to pretend to have magic powers, but making a pill in a nice little box made of alpaca claws and shrew foreskins make for good business apparently. Traditional Chinese medicine, aka horseshit, which I imagine is also sometimes used as an ingredient, is well known for being basically a socially acceptable form of a witch's brew. If I went to a European medieval market and asked for a concoction made up of poppy seeds and tapir pubes, they'd burn me for the witch I am. In China, you can just do this. This is why pangolins are endangered, because their scales are in high demand on the Chinese market. Basically because it's a fake recipe for making your knob stiff. It's all a placebo effect given magical form. Here, have a special pill I made with ancient passed down techniques given to me by my clan, and that if I told you, they would hurl me off a nearby cliff. If it doesn't work, it means your chi isn't strong enough, so go clean your bedroom and store some jing in your nuts. Then, come back and buy another one. Oh, what's that? You've come back to buy another one? Unfortunately, because I've used up some of my secret ingredients with the last one, the cost has just doubled. It's a level of scamming hustle that is difficult to not respect. Chinese media is formed into a few main categories. Shanxie, which I think is how it's called, is the common Donghua style of seeking immortal powers through mystical training and the battles between schools and sects. These are all, without fail, extremely fucking boring. You could switch a story mid-chapter and you nor I would notice. In fact, that's exactly what I did. I changed the anime being shown to fuck with you, and it worked. You can quickly identify a shanxie by their sick outfits, which I reckon if I had humanoid proportions I would look great in. Fortunately for us, we can actually see what it would look like if I was wearing something like this, as shanxie usually involves monster hybrids, demons, fairies, ghosts and vampires. I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but it's extremely important that your cultivation protagonist be as twinky as physically possible. Not much of a scholarly analysis, but an important observation. Looking like a K-pop band member is apparently critical for your jing. Wuxia is a more normal depiction with sprinkles of magic. Think like Redcliffe or Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where they just fight normally for a while and then start jumping up and down like toddlers in a bouncer. One of the themes of Wuxia is the idea of justice and ideals rather than service to an authority, and throughout history that's inspired the Wuxia genre to be involved in the romanticism of vigilantes and the heroes of the working people. As my research continued, I came across who is essentially the Moses or Abraham to shamanic cultivation, called Yu the Great. I mention him because he's objectively funny that he got away with possibly some of the greatest bullshittery ever committed. First one, the special turtle. The story goes that Yu's main job was to make sure that the Yellow River doesn't kill everyone, also known as the Yangtze River. This happens at stunning regularity in Chinese history. China's development is pretty much tied to this river, and every time it floods, millions of people die. This is just normal back then, and the river itself can resolutely be described as a knobhead. I think Chinese scholars who venerate the river as a holy symbol of life would also agree with me, so I'm not even going to get in trouble for that one. After bending the river to his will, apparently by magic, but really the stories tell of his great understanding of how rivers work, so most likely he wasn't magic, but just a smart dude. When the river receded after his intervention, it exposed a magical turtle whose shell contained the symbols of great power. Mr. Great Yu, what do symbols of power look like? Like this, of course. Well, how do we know you didn't just make up what symbols of power look like? Haha! Turtle! My favourite story of his is his origin story, which involves him not being born, but popping out of his dead dad's balls. Much like his father before him, he is known for shapeshifting into bears. How do we know he can do this? Because he walks like a bear, of course. His famous bear gait, as it's known. This, I think, is amazing. Sir, oh, great Mr. Yu, why do you walk so weird? Oh, well, it's because I shapeshift into a bear, of course. Alright, okay. This has led me to inherently distrust those with crippling injuries, or the elderly, for they are obviously Yao Guai taking human form and must be slain. In cultivation you have special rituals like you would in Buddhist sects, and it's worth mentioning because it's also really funny. It's not strictly tied to cultivation, but it does show the extent of how seriously people took the idea of achieving enlightenment. Self-mummification was a practice conducted by Japanese Buddhists. They believed that the way to become fully enlightened was to die during a state of Zen medication, bring their bodies to a state of undeath through the loss of fat, living off pine needles and bark, and then being buried alive. If they could do this successfully, they could stave off decomposition and mummify themselves and become holy objects. Would you like to see one? I'm not sure if I can show you, but I'm going to. Look at this little bastard. He's adorable, isn't he? If this process didn't kill so many of its practitioners, which led eventually to its banning, I'm not sure the living mummy had this in mind when he aimed to cultivate his life energy into a state more befitting the Tao, but it is what it is. I'd buy a Funko Pop of this guy. I made a joke in the last video about the Cultural Revolution in China, with Mao failing to kill enough scholars to ensure good anime content. This is actually an important point in the modern day promotion of cultivation anime, and more proof of my genius. Just a quick one from me. I'm just going to sit in the corner over here. I'm not doing anything untowards, just ignore me and keep watching. And I must stress, I am not siphoning your life energies directly into my balls. When the Communist Party of China came into power after the war, They engaged in what is known as the Cultural Revolution. In the most simple terms, it was the process in which the Communist Party culled the various elements of Chinese history and culture that didn't conform to the new order. For example, we can see it in the historical revisionism of what is allowed and what was not allowed. I'm a big Dynasty Warriors guy, and that's the video game telling of a proto-wuxia story of the romance of the Three Kingdoms. When the Cultural Revolution happened, and the killing and imprisonment started, the targets were the four olds: old ideas, culture, customs and habits. Because the novel included these four tenets, it was banned and suppressed. When the Cultural Revolution ended officially, it was unbanned. The interpretation was also shifted. Is it an excuse for me to talk about Dynasty Warriors? Yeah, it is, I'll admit it. But it's important for why cultivation media is now so prevalent. Chinese pride being the main part. When I say Chinese pride, I don't mean femboys or muscular men blowing whistles in parades, but the ancient traditions of China. They were no longer to be feared, but were to be important touchstones of Chinese culture. But things were, tweaked a little bit. Take, for instance, the Yellow Turban Rebellion. This was the event that brought about much of the novels. You had warlords under the Han Emperor, who were, by all accounts, corrupt and pretty terrible at governance. The peasants rose up behind a peasant shaman after centuries of building animosity, and then proceeded to take that inspiring tale, and then just murder and pillage a load of innocents. The warlords crushed the rebellion, and became the challengers to become the new supreme warlord of the Middle Kingdoms. Originally, the novel presents the peasants as good intending, but corrupted by wizardry and manipulated. They are tragic but a culpable group, requiring the hand of a noble warlord to set them right. From a communist perspective, the idea of working people seizing power for themselves is a good thing. The kind of main good guy of the novel is Liu Bei, who is a noble of lower stock and governs through kindness and helping the peasants at a cost to his own self, selecting warriors and officers through competency rather than noble birth. See the whole minister exam thing coming back. So you can see the positive connotations that align with modern Chinese philosophy. Cultivation shows, you will see, often have that the heroes come from low stock or peasantry, and it reflects the Taoist ideal that anyone can pursue the Tao, regardless of who they are or where they come from. Release That Witch, for example, is not so much a cultivation anime, but it utilises the same philosophy of what's seen in the depictions of Chinese cultural norms. He is reincarnated and sees a world that despises magic, and is failing to realise that utilising that power and bending it to his will is very familiar of what we discussed earlier for the good of the working people. See the parallels here? Here's another example of how I've done an absolutely tremendous job, and we can apply what we've learnt to Wukong, the game. You see, you are a fun little monkey guy. Not the Wukong in question, as that's a different thing entirely. You are a reincarnated host of Wukong, and through the trials you complete and items you receive, can see a transition into Wukong and take the title. This is a common part of Buddhism, which is closely related to Taoism. To become Buddha is the goal of a number of characters, where you need to ascend spiritually and eventually become a Buddha. I always thought it was that jolly fat lad that was Buddha, but no, that's a Buddha, or usually the Buddha, the original. According to Buddhist teachings, anyone can become Buddha, or eventually will become Buddha, however many reincarnations it takes. It's the corruption of mortal ideals that creates the enemies in the game. Those on the Buddha's path become corrupted, and then you must rectify it by beating the absolute living fuck out of them with a stick. Wukong, however, through a bunch of means and side quests, is able to become immortal, and his personality is based on the idea of fulfilling one's desire and having a complete disregard for anything or anyone as a form of the Tao. He doesn't really consider, he merely does, so you can see the parallels to what we discussed earlier. He's a trickster, which is kind of the embodiment of doing what you want, so it's no surprise that me and Wukong used to hang out a lot, though for some reason I haven't seen him in a while. I think I've given you the basis to at least somewhat understand the basics of cultivation. But here's the kicker. I still don't have a fucking clue what it is. But here's the second kicker. Neither do the people who are into cultivation, and don't let them lie to you. It's the successive layers of bullshit and fun shamanistic dances that make it all up. You could basically make a Chinese shaman on TikTok, and not a single person would notice. Do a fun little dance in the rain, and then go live when the Yellow River floods again. I hope you learnt something. This is the best example of educational materials designed to help scholars learn about the Taoist cultivation arts and its presence in media. A true bridging between cultural and religious understandings. Probably not. You know what? Yeah, it is. This is the greatest piece of cultivation material since Yu the Great burst from his father's scrotum. Speaking of scrotums, you know when I said I wasn't stealing your chi and storing it in my balls? I lied. Look at the size of these bad boys. I've got enough jing to propel me to the moon if I released it all at once. Oh, if you're wondering about how I'm going to deal with the weasels being contracted to go after me on behalf of the Wolf Council, well, they never got rid of all of my wolf listening devices that I hid around the room. And I know, from my time in the war, which I'd rather not discuss in detail, weasels are terrified of massive testicles.
No. Where did you hear this?
In China, and you did.
No, I didn't.
No, you did.
What are you talking about? I did no such thing.
You, the bear guy.
I'm clearly a weasel, thank you very much.
No, you can't thank him. You's dead.
You's dead?
Is that a threat?
That means nothing coming from you.
How dare you? You is a wonderful teacher.
I will teach you the end of my blade.
Well, you can't. He's dead. Probably a bear or something.
You can't be serious.
I assure you, he is, and he was very good at his job. He has a bear gate and everything.
How can you assure him? He's dead. You said so himself.
How can he say he's dead if he's dead?
Ah, for fuck's sake.
Bye.